Hi, everybody. Dan Illman, Mike Beer, taking a look at the DRF race of the day for Saturday, July the 13th. It is the Grade 1 Diana at Saratoga. Let's throw up the field for race number 10. Fillies and mares going 1.1 miles on the inner turf. The Diana is always a sensational race. It's a sensational betting race. We've got horses stretching out in distance, horses cutting back in distance, horses returning off layoffs, and we got lots of Chad Brown.
Always have lots of Chad Brown in these races. That's no surprise. It's a really, really good race, though. It feels like there are several different ways to go, Dan. Are they going to finally bet Didia in this race off of her impressive Grade 1 at Saratoga last month?
She looked so good winning that race, going a slightly longer distance. And you're right, she never seems to get the respect she deserves at the windows. It'll be interesting to see how they bet this race. Chili Flag's been on quite a roll for Chad and just beat several of these horses in the Just a Game going 1 mile. 10 entered for turf, the 11 Venti Valentine. Main track only. We'll throw up the Timeform US pace projector. Last year's winner, White Beam, expected to be on the lead. Evie Jets shouldn't be too far behind. These two sparred in the Just a Game. White Beam got the better of Evie Jets. Both were beaten less than a length.
Yeah, they both ran okay in there. I didn't necessarily see the excuse for either one, but they should both be forward once again. And that's their running style. There's not a ton of other pace in here.
Note the LP designation over the chiclet of the number 10. That's Chili Flag. And when you watch her run, you'll know why. She has the fastest Timeform US late pace rating because she kicks like a mule when she gets the right setup. The number 1 Moira is pretty good. This is a tough spot. It's her first race since the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Turf, but how can you complain about it? Let's watch the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Turf. Moira got a very nice trip under Flavien Prat, settling in the second flight, easing to the outside, and she comes with a good, strong run to finish best of the North American contingent. Those are two very good Europeans that finished ahead of her.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, she had no real excuse in here. The trip was good. She's got every chance to win. But then you realize who's out kicking her at the end of this race, and you realize that she ran a really, really strong race there, Dan. It feels like I didn't love her EP Taylor 2 starts back. I'm not sure what her excuse would be there. But otherwise, it just feels like 9 furlongs and better and longer. That's what she really wants.
She sold for $3 million at public auction shortly after that race. Nice to see her back as a 5-year-old, and she could be kicking in the stretch, but she'll have to deal with the layoff. Coppice is the number 2. She's one of the many trained by Chad Brown. She's been betting both starts in North America. She ran well in the Distaff Turf Mile at Churchill Downs. Last time out in the Just a Game, she didn't run well at all.
Was a little surprised that she wound up, sort of at the back of the pack early in there. And then they tried to make sort of a middle move with her, Dan. I don't know. She just didn't run that well, as far as I could tell. It was pretty disappointing. And listen, her Distaff Turf Mile, first time in the country, it wasn't bad. But she got a great trip in there, and Chili Flag ran better than she did.
Mission of Joy, the number 3, sort of an underrated sort, came with a nice run in the Just a Game last time out to finish 3rd. She was punching on widest, just couldn't kick with Chili Flag, the final 3/16 of a mile. She probably has to do slightly better, but she's going to be a great price for red hot connections, and she'll be running at the end.
I agree. I wonder if 9 furlongs maybe plays more to her wheelhouse than some of the others in here. I'm not sure about that, but I just wonder. Her last 2 starts are fine. She's been in against Chili Flag in both of those races. And I don't know about you. I didn't see the excuses for her. She got good trips in those races. She had every chance. And again, Chili Flag was just better than she was. Maybe 9 furlongs makes a difference.
Didia, the number 4, is so consistent. 11 of 17 lifetime. She finished behind Moira in the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Turf, bounced right back to win the Pegasus World Cup Filly and Mare Turf at 1.1 miles. Now, she's very versatile from a distance standpoint. I wonder if 1.1 miles is her best distance. She got wired in the Jenny Wiley. Don't take too much stock into that race. She actually ran quite well chasing the pace. And then here's her New York last time out at Saratoga, where she beats a good field going 1 mile and 3/16. Her best asset is her tactical speed. She can put Jose Ortiz wherever he wants.
I agree. That's why she's just so consistent and so hard to beat. She's always getting good trips, and she got a great one in here. But look at her just take over and power away from this field, Dan. That's Nisi Marie, who's also back in there, finishing up pretty well for second in her own right. I think this was a good race overall. Another super strong performance for Didia. Listen, you're not getting the 9-1 this time. Somehow they overlooked her last time, but she still might be a fair price in here.
Gina Romantica, the number 5, looked like she might be the best one of the Chad Brown trained turf fillies going into 2024. She won the First Lady of Grade 1 at Keeneland last fall. She was only beaten a length against the boys in the Breeders' Cup Mile. Her 2 starts this year lacked punch. Okay, the Jenny Wiley, she was wired off the layoff. Fine. I needed to see her do a little bit better last time out in the Just a Game, Mike. Maybe she's racing herself back into shape. She did win the Jenny Wiley, the First Lady, pardon me, third off the layoff last year.
That's true. Her 2 Grade 1 wins are both at Keeneland, so that's just something to take into account. But she's another one, Dan, who I wonder if maybe getting a little bit more distance to work with will actually help her. I'm kind of with you, though. I was willing to forgive the Jenny Wiley where she just didn't run that well. Man, I did not like her Just a Game, though. I didn't see her excuse in that race. She just didn't really finish that hard.
She seemed cold on the board throughout the wagering and wound up at 5-1. White Beam won this race last year, third off the layoff. She's going to repeat the same pattern for Chad Brown and Flavien Prat, and Timeform US believes she can make the lead. In her 3 starts this year, she ran really well against Nisi Marie in the Beaugay, a race where she was involved in a pretty wicked pace battle, considering it was her first off the layoff, and she just got pipped. Just a Game last time out, similar situation, pressing the pace from Evie Jets, briefly making the lead, holding firm for second. I wonder if she's racing herself back into shape as well.
Yeah, maybe she is. She ran fine last time. Managed to hold on for second, barely in there, but she did hold on for second after doing some racing up front. Her Beaugay was sort of a similar situation, caught in a duel. Nisi Marie comes and closes her down. I feel like I could make excuses for her if I wanted to, Dan. She does have the Diana win last year, which is a race that I'm kind of conflicted about. I didn't think it was a particularly strong running of the race, and I didn't know how much credit I wanted to give her. I could go either way on her. I feel like I'm just going to have to wait and see what kind of price she is, because I wouldn't take a short one on her.
Of the Brown Train runners, the 7 Fluffy Socks, despite being a millionaire and a multiple graded stakes winner, might have the most to prove at this point in her career at the Grade 1 level, especially against a field of this kind. At least she's coming into this race in really good form. Chad dropped her in for the Gallarette, this race at Pimlico last time out, and it was a race that she couldn't lose on paper, and Fluffy Socks didn't disappoint.
Oh, no, she wins this race really, really easily. Had this field over a barrel. But it's nice to see her get back to the winner's circle. I mean, she's hard to take on top in races like this, but it's not like, she's one of those horses, Dan. It's not like she never wins. I mean, she's got 6 career victories. She's a 4-time graded stakes winner in her career. She's pretty good, and she shows up every single time. Another horse that I don't think the 9 furlongs is any issue at all.
As a relatively lightly raced 4-year-old, I still think there's a chance that Nisi Marie can continue to improve. And Butch Reed's done a very good job with this cross-traffic filly thus far, winning the Beaugay over White Beam, when getting the setup, but still coming with a really strong, determined run to make up a lot of ground in the final 3/16. And then last time in the New York, while beaten by Didia, running on again at the end. She's another filly who's very consistent and might get lost in the wagering.
Yeah, I agree. Even though she had really solid turf form going into that Beaugay, and just had the great setup in there, I thought it was kind of hard to get behind her, just because that race kind of fell into her lap a little bit. I think she dispelled all that stuff in the New York last time. It was, I thought, overall a really good ride from Rosario, but she ran, man, just another really good performance. She's underrated.
Evie Jets does have good speed, and she does run well at Saratoga. She won the Ballston Spa over the inner turf last year, and she took a big step forward in the Just a Game last time out. Her seasonal debut was the Distaff Turf Mile against Chili Flag, and I just wonder if she cared for the ground that day. It was a soft, and she had to deal with the layoff as well, and she didn't get forward. She did last time out. White Beam ran the better race. Several of the other horses ran better races, but she's going to be a giant price on the tote, and she's not too far off of these.
I'm going to agree with all that stuff. I mean, I think it's going to be hard for her to beat all of these horses, Dan, but she's good, and she could get the right trip in this race. I feel like I always have to point out when we talk about her, yes, she won the Ballston Spa here last year. She did it with a perfect trip where several of the horses behind her got totally stopped through the stretch. So, I didn't want to give her too much credit for it, but she is underrated. She's a pretty good horse.
Chili Flag completes the body of this field with Venti Valentine entered main track only. Let's watch her Just a Game. This one's just been on a roll right now. She's won 3 in a row, and that was after just a terrible trip when she was beaten by Didia in the Pegasus World Cup. She worked out an in-out trip here, but she's got a kick. They're really running in front of her, but she is flying now the final 1/8 of the mile, and she's getting away from this field at the end.
Yeah, she fires another good one in here. Got the right kind of trip in here. That's missing a joy. It's right to her outside the number one. They were basically on even terms at the top of the stretch, Dan. And Chili Flag just flat out kicked her in raging form right now. I guess the question for Chili Flag now, Dan, is she a miler? Does the 9 furlongs make any difference at all? The one time they tried it with her, she didn't run that well. And she got beat by a horse who would be, I don't know, 1,000,000 to 1 in here.
But she also could be a much different
Yeah,
horse
sure.
right now. I do have the same concerns, and I think there's a chance she could get bet off that 9
Yeah.
to 2 a little bit, considering her current form. A mile and an eighth, maybe a bit of a question mark. You'll know her in the stretch. Venti Valentine has entered main track only. We don't want to see her. We want this race to be on turf because it's so competitive. And before you take a look at our top selections, please click the subscribe button on the Daily Racing Form YouTube channel for the latest DRF videos. Top pick time for the Diana. Mike, you are going with Didia. She's so consistent. She's going to probably work out a good trip, and 9 furlongs might suit her the best.
Yeah, although they're all reasons why I had her on top. That I happen to be a huge Chili Flag guy, but like you, I just sort of felt like maybe she would take the money in here, and I'm not sure that I would go too short on her going 9 furlongs. Although I'm afraid of her in her current form. I'm going to take the Dia on top. I also, put the returning Moira in there because I think this is her distance as well.
I'm expecting Moira to run well despite the layoff. I do think Didia is going to run her usual good race. I'm not saying Evie Jets is a likely winner. I do think she's going to outrun her odds simply because she has tactical speed. She likes this course, and it seemed like at least her last race, there was renewed life, and maybe she's rounding herself back into form. She'll be a giant price in here. You might want to use her as well underneath. 4-10-1-8 for Mike, 9-1-4-10 for me, grade 1 Diana. Saturday at the Spa. Good luck.